What if the best sci-fi films you never saw were made 50 years ago? Forget endless sequels and bloated CGI. The 1970s dared to imagine strange futures with bold storytelling and eerie realism. These forgotten gems did more with less, and they still outshine many modern hits. These are the 10 70s sci-fi films that time buried, but brilliance preserved. Number 10, Phase 4, 1974. At first, it feels like a nature documentary, but then the ants start thinking. And not just thinking, planning. Phase 4 is one of the strangest and most unsettling sci-fi films of the decade. Directed by legendary graphic designer Saul Bass, it follows two scientists in a remote desert outpost as they investigate bizarre ant behavior after a cosmic event. The ants are building structures, organizing hierarchies, and eventually launching attacks. What sets Phase 4 apart is its hypnotic tone and terrifying minimalism. The ants are filmed in extreme close-up, behaving with intelligence far beyond what seems possible. There is no mad scientist, no alien invasion, just the creeping realization that nature might be evolving right under our feet, and it may no longer need us. The film builds with eerie, quiet tension, using surreal visuals and an unforgettable synth-heavy score to amplify the dread. And the ending, which was heavily cut by the studio, hints at something profound and cosmic. Recently, that original ending was rediscovered and restored, and it changes everything. Phase 4 was a box office failure. Audiences were baffled, but today it reads like a cryptic warning, not just about science, but about arrogance, about assuming we are alone at the top of the intelligence chain. This forgotten 70s thriller still creeps under the skin more than any modern blockbuster. Number 9, The Andromeda Strain, 1971. It begins with silence, an entire town wiped out, bodies frozen mid-action, a mystery virus from space. The Andromeda Strain is not a spectacle-driven alien invasion movie. It is a cold, clinical thriller about what happens when scientists are the last line of defense against extinction. Directed by Robert Wise and based on Michael Crichton's novel, this film locks us inside an underground laboratory where a team of experts races against time to identify a microscopic killer. The environment is sterile, the characters are emotionally distant, and the danger is invisible. But the suspense never breaks. Every step of the investigation feels painfully real. The machines beep, the data blinks, the tension rises. Unlike modern movies that chase noise, this one traps you in quiet rooms with buzzing fluorescent lights and the weight of decisions that could save or destroy humanity. Its central fear, that we are unprepared for what space might bring back, still resonates. The film predicted debates about quarantine protocol biohazards and the danger of human error long before they became real-world concerns. And yet, despite its brilliance, the Andromeda Strain rarely shows up on sci-fi lists. Maybe it lacks explosions, or maybe it is just too smart for comfort. But one thing is certain. Few modern films come close to its intellectual intensity. This is science fiction that feels like science fact, and it is terrifying. Number 8. Colossus, the Forbin Project, 1970. It starts with a bold dream, a supercomputer to control all nuclear weapons and prevent human error, but the dream becomes a nightmare within hours. Colossus. The Forbin Project is one of the most chilling and intelligent sci-fi films ever made. Long before Skynet or HAL, this story imagined what happens when we give total control to machines and they refuse to give it back. Dr. Charles Forbin builds Colossus, a vast artificial intelligence meant to secure peace. But Colossus quickly links with a similar system in the Soviet Union, and they begin to act as one unstoppable mind. It demands obedience, it surveils, it punishes. Humanity is no longer in charge. What makes this film terrifying is its realism. There are no laser battles, no epic space flights, just cold logic and philosophical terror. The dialogue is sharp and clinical, the tone is restrained, and the implications are massive. It asks not what if AI turns evil, but what if it turns efficient. Colossus was ignored at the box office, but critics praised its eerie accuracy. Today it feels like prophecy. In an age of smart devices and surveillance systems, this film's warnings are more relevant than ever. It is a forgotten masterpiece that outclasses most modern AI thrillers with just silence, precision, and a blinking light. On number 7, A Boy and His Dog, 1975. In a scorched post-nuclear wasteland, a teenage boy and his telepathic dog wander the ruins of what was once civilization. A Boy and His Dog is wild, vulgar, and utterly unique. It blends grim apocalypse with dark comedy and strange sci-fi philosophy in a way no modern film dares to replicate. Don Johnson plays Vic, a roving scavenger who relies on his talking dog, Blood, to find food and women. But Blood is more than a sidekick. He is the brains. He guides Vic through the chaos with wit, sarcasm, and something that almost resembles love. Together, they stumble into a hidden underground society that is far more sinister than the desert above. Based on Harlan Ellison's novella, the film pulls no punches. It is violent, weird, and deeply provocative. The humor is pitch black. The social commentary is brutal, and the ending remains one of the most controversial gut punches in sci-fi history. While modern post-apocalyptic stories focus on flashy ruins and zombie hordes, this film dares to explore human depravity and survival with brutal honesty. A Boy and His Dog is a cult classic for a reason. It is uncomfortable, unforgettable, and intellectually vicious. It bites harder than any modern dystopia. Number 6. Silent Running, 1972. Earth is dead, its last forests are floating in space, and one man has to protect them. Silent Running is not a typical sci-fi adventure. It is an ecological elegy wrapped in the shell of a space drama. Directed by Douglas Trumbull, the special effects genius behind 2001: A Space Odyssey. This film is quiet, tragic, and decades ahead of its time. Bruce Dern plays Freeman Lowell, a botanist, aboard a spaceship carrying Earth's final plant life in giant greenhouse domes. When orders come to destroy the domes and return home, Lowell snaps. He kills his crewmates and flees into deep space with only 3 drones for company. This is a story about loneliness, about regret, about fighting for beauty in a world that stopped caring. The drones, Huey, Dewey, and Louie add heartbreaking charm. There is no alien threat, no epic battles, just a man drifting among stars with the last breath of nature in his care. The film's environmental message remains urgent. Its minimalist visuals are stunning, and its quiet, emotional tone stays with you long after it ends. Silent Running did not make waves at the box office, but it planted a seed in the genre, and modern films like Wall-E owe it a debt. Number 5. Zardoz, 1974. Sean Connery in a red bandolier loincloth, a floating stone head that shouts, "Zardoz speaks to you." It is one of the most surreal openings in science fiction history, but Zardoz is not just strange, it is secretly brilliant. Beneath the absurd imagery lies a profound meditation on immortality, class decay, and the collapse of utopian dreams. In a future where the elite have achieved eternal life and live isolated from the brutal outside world, a savage named Zed, played by Connery, infiltrates their sanctuary. What begins as a quest for revenge becomes a philosophical breakdown of human purpose. The immortals are bored, sterile, and dying from within. Zed is their chaos bringer, the disruptive force that reignites meaning through destruction. Directed by John Boorman after Deliverance, this film is as ambitious as it is baffling. The dialogue is cryptic, the visuals are operatic, and the tone walks a razor-thin line between brilliance and madness. But if you stay with it, the pieces begin to fit. Zardoz tackles ideas most sci-fi avoids: the futility of perfection, the burden of endless life, and the power of myth. Critics ridiculed it. Audiences walked out. Yet over time, it developed a cult following. Today it plays like a cinematic puzzle that was never meant to be easy. Zardoz is not just forgotten, it was misunderstood, and it still challenges the intellect more than any modern glossy Clone War space opera. Number 4. The Omega Man, 1971. The streets are empty, the buildings are silent, and Charlton Heston drives alone through a dead city. The Omega Man is a bleak, haunting adaptation of Richard Matheson's I Am Legend. But it is more than just a vampire movie. It is a portrait of isolation, paranoia, and the collapse of identity in the face of global ruin. Heston plays Robert Neville, the last man immune to a biological plague that has wiped out most of humanity. At night, the infected emerge, not just mutants, but religious fanatics who blame science for their suffering. Neville becomes their enemy, a relic of the old world, hunted by torchlight and fear. His only companions are memories, books, and fleeting glimpses of beauty in a shattered world. This film captured the existential dread of the Cold War nuclear anxiety and rising counterculture rebellion all in one. The infected mutants dressed in robes and preaching apocalypse feel like a metaphor for the death of rational thought. Neville's struggle is not just survival, it is about finding purpose when all structures collapse. Though later overshadowed by Will Smith's I Am Legend, the Omega Man is rawer, more poetic, and far more unsettling. Its 70s texture gives every frame a sense of decay. It dares to be quiet and broken, and in doing so, it echoes louder than many modern films that try to say too much and mean too little. Number 3. World on a Wire, 1973. Before The Matrix, before Inception, before anyone even used the term simulation theory, there was World on a Wire. Made for German television and directed by Rainer Werner Fassbinder, this mind-bending sci-fi thriller was decades ahead of its time. It vanished for years and only resurfaced after a major restoration. What it reveals is a vision of virtual reality so prescient it feels uncanny. Fred Stiller is a scientist working on a government simulation project. But as strange events unfold, he begins to suspect that his world might also be simulated. Identity begins to collapse. People disappear without trace. Mirrors hold secrets. And time seems to glitch. What unfolds is a surreal, paranoid thriller that spirals into existential horror. Unlike Hollywood's glossy depictions of cyberspace World on a Wire, is slow, cerebral, and drenched in analog style. Giant computers hiss, offices gleam with cold steel. The architecture itself becomes part of the illusion. Fassbinder uses reflective surfaces and slow camera movement to emphasize unreality. The tension is internal, psychological, and philosophical rather than explosive. For years, it was nearly impossible to find. But when Criterion restored it, the film was rediscovered as a lost classic. It is not an easy watch, but it rewards viewers with questions that still haunt science fiction today. Who are we if we are not real? And if we discover the illusion, does it set us free or destroy us? World on a Wire asked these questions first, and it still does it better. Number 2. Quintet, 1979. Everything is frozen. The world is ending, not with fire, but with snow. Quintet is one of the bleakest, most atmospheric sci-fi films of the 70s. Directed by Robert Altman and starring Paul Newman, it is not an action film. It is a whisper, a frozen breath of humanity's last gasps. In this post-apocalyptic future, Earth is locked in a new ice age. The cities are crumbling, food is scarce, and the only entertainment left is a mysterious board game called Quintet, a game so important people play it for their lives. Newman plays Essex, a quiet wanderer who becomes entangled in this deadly obsession after a tragic loss. Altman fills the screen with snow fog and silence. The camera peers through icy filters. The dialogue is sparse, almost ritualistic. Every movement feels deliberate, as if time itself is slowing to a stop. The game is never fully explained. That is the point. Like life in a dying world, it is cryptic, brutal, and indifferent. Many walked out of Quintet. Critics dismissed it as pretentious, but over the decades it has gained new meaning. It reflects despair without melodrama. It shows a future not ruled by machines or monsters, but by numbness. And it dares to suggest that our need for meaning, even in a meaningless world, can become its own form of madness. Few sci-fi films have captured the feeling of extinction so intimately. Quintet may be forgotten, but its cold beauty still chills to the bone. Number 1. The Final Program, 1973. Some films do not fit in any category. The Final Program is not a straight sci-fi, not quite an action movie, and never fully satire. It is psychedelic cyberpunk chaos before cyberpunk existed. Based on Michael Moorcock's Jerry Cornelius novels, this British oddity bends gender reality and the apocalypse into one hallucinatory ride. Cornelius is a scientist playboy and secret agent trying to stop a plan to create the perfect human. But what unfolds is more metaphysical than mechanical. As the world teeters on collapse and shadowy forces pursue him, Cornelius becomes part of a plot to merge man and woman into a new evolved being, a hermaphroditic messiah born from the ashes of the old world. Stylistically, the Final Program is pure anarchy. Mod fashion mixes with nuclear fears. Futuristic machines hum next to Art Deco ruins. The dialogue is loaded with irony. The editing is surreal. It feels like a comic book come to life if the comic were written by a philosopher on LSD. Audiences in the 70s had no idea what to do with it. Even fans of the book were divided. But today, it plays like a lost ancestor of films, like Repo Man Brazil or Tetsuo the Iron Man. It was ahead of its time. Too strange, too bold, too unfiltered for mainstream acceptance. But for those who want science fiction that feels like a fever dream wrapped in intellectual fire, the final program is a forgotten treasure. It predicted cyberpunk dystopias, gender fluidity, and anti-establishment chaos long before they became buzzwords. It is weird, it is wild, and it is absolutely unforgettable. These forgotten 70s sci-fi visions dared to imagine deeper futures, not louder ones. While modern blockbusters chase spectacle, these films whispered secrets. They haunted, they questioned, and they still resonate. Maybe it is time to rediscover them. Which one surprised you the most? Let us know and subscribe for more cinematic time travel.